In 5 million years' time, a huge grassy plain stretches for 3,000 kilometers across the South American landscape. And stalking through the grass, giant birds. But compared to what used to live here, this landscape is very sparsely populated. This vast prairie used to be a rainforest, the Amazon rainforest. Where there is grass, there were once trees stretching from the Andes to the Atlantic. The forests have gone because in 5 million years' time, the Earth has been plunged into another ice age. As the Earth's climate chilled, the ice caps expanded, spreading from the North and South poles into lower latitudes. The climate became colder and drier, and starved of life-giving rain, the Amazon rainforest died out. In the future, only the great river courses support any forest at all. The rest has been replaced by grasslands. Today, the lush Amazon rainforests are teeming with life, one of the richest habitats on the planet. But most of the creatures that live here are far too specialized to survive the death of the rainforest. Creatures such as macaws, sloths, and peccaries are all dependent on the complex forest ecosystem, adapted to fit very particular niches. They stand no chance of surviving when the forest is replaced by grassland. And to make matters worse, the change from forest to grassland happened incredibly quickly, only a few thousand years, a mere blink of an eye in the timescale of evolution. This Amazon prairie is very different from the rainforest. But there was a forest monkey adaptable enough to survive the change. These strange creatures are babucaris. At home on the prairie, babucaris live in big, loose troops, scattered through the dense grass. But what kind of present-day Amazonian monkey could adapt to life on the grasslands?
In 5 million years, most of the Amazonian rainforest will have disappeared. At the moment, there's a huge variety of monkeys that live in these forests. Some of them, at least, will have evolved into species and now colonise the grasslands. Perhaps something like the wakari. It's an adaptable animal, it lives in the trees, but it's also an omnivore, it spends time on the ground, it's got a highly evolved social system, and you need a social system if you're going to go out onto the grasslands because you need lots of monkeys with you to help protect you from predators.
As the trees thinned out, wakaris could adapt their social system to live in bigger and bigger groups. Behavior like this can change quite quickly in evolutionary terms, so the wakari social system could keep up with the rapidly changing habitat. In the future, the babucaris have also inherited the wakaris' bright-coloured heads, but have gone even further. Their faces and bottoms are both bright blue to help the widely scattered troops stay in contact and so watch out for trouble. Babucaris spread out through the grass as they move, searching a wide area for anything to eat. A large troop means lots of eyes looking out for food. But more important, it also means lots of sentries, keeping a lookout for predators like the giant killer birds that stalk through the long grass. Caterpillars. Like the Babukaris, they live in groups. These are hunting parties. Killers are fast, but they don't just run down their victims. Some of the birds split off from the main group. The Babukaris are heading into an ambush. Once a Babukari is killed, the other Kara killers join the feast. These long-legged monkeys could easily outmaneuver a single Kara killer, so Kara killers have to hunt in groups. Some stalk around the monkey troop unseen in the long grass and wait. Using their colourful crests as signals to each other, the rest of the pack drive the monkeys into the trap. Most of the troop will escape, but one or two will be caught. The ancestor of these giant birds is a grassland predator that's around today.
Caterpillars are one of the characteristic birds of this grassland, but they're big, much bigger than most modern birds, and certainly much bigger than their ancestors. They're about 3 meters tall, but they evolved from these small terrestrial falcons. Caracaras are common in South American grasslands today. They're fairly primitive falcons, but they're quite closely related to the peregrines and kestrels many people are familiar with. But they live on the ground, and they find their prey on the ground, not in the air.
Though caracaras can still fly, their long legs help them forage on the ground. But as the grasslands spread, they became even more efficient ground predators.
The main way that caterpillars have become a really efficient terrestrial predator on the ground is by giving up flight. Flight's expensive, not only in the energy you use to get around, but in the fact that you've got to develop wings and muscles and all the systems that drive them. If you drop that, it then becomes much easier to invest the energy, evolutionarily, in becoming faster. And the best way of becoming faster is to be bigger.
And that's exactly what happened to the caracara, the ancestor of the mighty carakilla. Size change can happen quickly in evolutionary terms, and 5 million years is plenty of time for the caracara to evolve into a 3-meter-tall carakilla. It's also enough time for this bird to evolve some impressive ways of killing its prey.
We know that by manipulating the genetics, you can very easily trigger a modern bird to develop a claw. The claw goes right back to their dinosaur ancestors. Same morphology, same position on the wings. And this has been re-evolved in the caterpillar. It's developed this large sickle-shaped claw, just like the claws of dinosaurs, and it's using it in exactly the same way. It can catch and grab the prey, and it can disembowel it and tear the prey up before it eats it.
Carakillas are fearsome enough on their own, but in groups, they're lethal. Babukari's social behavior has evolved in response to such predators. But surviving in the grasslands has taken much more than just a change in behavior.
Life on the grassland involves travelling long distances. Your food is widely scattered and you've got to be able to move fast if a predator approaches. So these animals have developed long, supple limbs to cover long distances, and it also helps them forage more effectively. They can put their hands into crevices, they can dig, they can look for food.
Baboucaris have a primate's dexterous hands and a primate's intelligence, and they use both to find food. There are small, shallow lakes scattered all across the grasslands. And around the edges of the lakes are strange woven baskets that look almost man-made. These baskets are woven from grass and twigs and provide shelter from predators for hordes of small fish. They're fish traps, made by the Baboucaris. These lakes are full of fish, so it doesn't take long for the trap to fill up. The lakes are a regular stop for the Baboucaris as they patrol their territory. The older monkeys are the most skillful at making the traps. The youngsters watch them and learn how it's done. The monkeys need this fish protein to supplement their rather sparse diet from the Amazon prairies.
Food is not particularly abundant in these grasslands, and the Baboucari troops have to travel long distances each day looking for food. They're basically omnivores. They'll eat plant material, they'll eat roots, tubers, insects, any small mammals they can catch. Basically, they have to exploit any food source they can find. And one way they actually supplement their diet is eating fish. There's waters out there on the plains, streams and ponds, and these things have managed to weave small traps made out of bits of twig and grass. They throw them into the streams, they leave them there, and periodically as the troop passes, they pull them out. Fish will shelter in them and they'll eat the fish. It supplements their diet, and it's a skill they need in this arid landscape. Other primates do much the same.
Today, chimps use tools to help them find food. Certain troops have learned to strip down twigs and poke them into termite nests to pull out the juicy insects. This skill needs intelligence as well as nimble fingers to manipulate the primitive tools. But using tools like this isn't instinctive. Mothers have to teach their infants how it's done. In the future, tool use, building elaborate fish traps, helps Baboucaris survive. And being large gives the Caracilla an edge. But there are yet other ways of adapting to life here. This is a rattleback. Rattlebacks are very territorial. When two rattlebacks meet, they perform a noisy display by rattling large heavy plates on their backs. The loudest wins, and the loser retires gracefully.
The rattleback is a rodent. Rodents are highly successful animals. About 40% of all the mammals alive today are rodents. They're adaptable, they can live in a wide variety of habitats. The rattleback probably evolved from some large South American rodent that lived on the forest floor, something like a paca or an agouti. Moved out onto the grasslands as they evolved, but out on the grasslands is exposed to predators. The agoutis and the packers can rely on cover, they can hide in the forest. The rattleback's got nowhere to hide, so as it moved onto the grassland, it had to develop some form of protection, hence the plates on its back.
The plates are used for territorial displays, but they're mainly for defense, as the rattleback's ancestors evolved to cope with the rapid loss of forest cover. But evolving armor wasn't that difficult for those forest rodents. The plates are only made from hair, but it's become matted and fused like rhino horn. There are creatures today with similar armor to rattlebacks, but they're not rodents. These are pangolins. They look like animated pine cones. And if threatened, curl into a tight ball, making themselves impregnable. In the future, rattlebacks don't just curl up. They have another way to protect themselves. A fringe of long, tough spines along each side of the rattleback stick into the earth as it hunkers down. Muscles at the base of the spines lock them in place. It's almost impossible for anything to dislodge it. They need this extra degree of protection because of what they eat. Eggs. But not just any eggs. This is a caterpillar nest, containing a dozen large eggs.
Caterpillars breed communally. It's essential for them. If they laid individual nests distributed over a big area, those nests would all be vulnerable to predation. But by nesting in a group, and using a single nest, the animals have got much greater safety. The females lay their eggs in a single nest, each one laying an egg or two in turn.
All the eggs are incubated by the male caterpillar, who only leaves his duties briefly to find food. But it's enough time for the rattleback to find the nest. The nest isn't left unguarded for long. Being caught red-handed doesn't worry a rattleback. Those tough scales are strong enough to survive even an angry caterpillar. Although the Earth is in the grip of an ice age, the tropical summer is still warm and brings massive thunderstorms. Sometimes these storms bring rain to the parched landscape. But at the end of the summer, the grass is tinder dry. Storms build up every afternoon, and everyone waits for some relief from the stifling heat. But these storms don't always bring rain. More often, they bring fire.
One of the features of savanna habitat is it burns. Any number of events, perhaps a glint of sunlight off something shiny, perhaps a lightning strike, will trigger a fire. And fire is essential to the ecosystem. It's part of the life cycle of the vegetation, because the next generation of plants, the grass or trees or whatever, will only usually set seed after grass has burnt.
Fire is a crucial part of life in all grasslands. It may look destructive, But it's good news for many creatures. Today, storks are drawn to the fire edge to feed on insects, reptiles or mammals, flushed into the open by the flames. But more important, fire turns dead, dry grass into a rich ash. This fertilizes the ground, creating a flush of new growth, which in turn feeds grazers. So fire brings new life to the grasslands. Like storks do today, caterpillars of the future feed on the fire edge, running down anything that escapes the flames. Caterpillars can use their speed to stay one step ahead of the wall of fire. The Prairies use their speed to head in the opposite direction. There's nothing for them amongst the flames, except, of course, the caterpillars, their enemies. But some creatures can't outrun the fire. The rattleback has no chance of escaping. As the flames pass, the rattleback seems doomed. But the rattleback's scales are fireproof as well as caterpillar-proof. As long as the fire moves quickly, the rattleback can survive. Fire is not as destructive as it looks. Some animals survive it, others profit by it. Colorful and smart ground-dwelling monkeys, huge killer birds that hunt in deadly packs, a bizarre, armored, fireproof rodent. All living on a vast open plain where the Amazon rainforest once stood. Life in these grasslands is very different from life in the forest. But evolution has shaped new creatures with new ways of surviving on these Amazon prairies.